The first time my sister's lie reached my ears, it felt like a hand closing over my mouth. My name is Delaney Rhodes, 34, public school counselor, steady on paper, steady in habit. I live 6 blocks from the river in our Midwestern hometown, where people still leave casseroles on porches and borrow ladders without asking twice. My sister, Kara, lives across town with her perfect porch swing and a front yard that looks like a magazine spread. She is 1 year younger, the crowd favorite, the one with stories that always seem to land. The lie arrived on a Wednesday, between a student's anxiety spiral and an overdue grant report. My mother called, voice thin, asking if I could return the bracelet. I asked which bracelet. She sighed, as if I had already disappointed her, and said the sapphire one Dad gave her before we were born. Kara had apparently seen me slip it into my bag at last Sunday's lunch. She had told our parents she was torn about saying something, but she believed transparency healed families. The word struck with practiced righteousness. I stared at the stack of permission slips on my desk and felt the ground tilt. I had never borrowed anything without asking, not in childhood, not now. The bracelet had never left the mahogany dish by my parents' sink, where it slept among spare keys and rubber bands. I said that, carefully. My mother went quiet in a tremble of disappointment. She told me Dad had looked everywhere. She told me he felt foolish. Her voice softened, then hardened. She asked again for the bracelet. When the call ended, I walked to the staff bathroom and turned the faucet on cold. It wasn't just the accusation, it was the tone of certainty. The casual way a person became a story that fit someone's needs. I saw Sunday's lunch again, details aligning with a cruel precision. Kara discovering the kitchen faucet leak, volunteering to tidy, laughing in a stage whisper about my clumsiness, the way Mom had shaken her head indulgently. I felt the room press in around me with a strange, rubbery quiet. That evening I drove to my parents' house, the sky washed with that late winter pink. The front door was unlocked, the house warm with whatever my mother had roasted. I found Dad on his knees by the sink cabinet, flashlight in his mouth, looking for something he had already decided was gone. Mom watched from the kitchen table, her hands folded on a dish towel like a prayer. I offered to help. They did not move. We spoke carefully, like surgeons with needles. I said I had not taken it. Dad nodded without looking, a tight little move that meant not yet. Mom asked where I had been on Monday night. The question carried weight it did not deserve. I said I had been home, doing laundry, folding shirts that nobody would ever see. The clock above the stove hummed. The house held its breath. Kara arrived with a jar of soup and a soft cardigan, snowflakes melting across her hair. She hugged Mom and kissed Dad's cheek, then turned to me with eyes full of sorrow. I wish this weren't happening, she said, as if a hurricane had wandered through. I just want us to be okay. The words were cotton on broken skin. She avoided my eyes, then met them with a practiced tremor, the one she used when she needed a gentle audience. I went home through a river town dark enough to swallow names. On my kitchen counter, I set my keys down and lined them up like soldiers. I replayed Sunday's lunch again, slower, checking every hand and pocket. A dull realization stirred, as faint as a coal. A story this smooth did not appear by itself. Someone had polished it. I stood in the dark, listening to my refrigerator hum, and felt the first spark catch. By Friday, the lie had traveled farther than my car ever did. Parents in my counseling office smiled politely, eyes flicking down. A neighbor, sweeping her stoop, asked if everything was okay at home, voice syrupy, curious. A colleague left a bakery box on my desk, the note unsigned, the icing too sweet. The bracelet became a shorthand for who I was, a shape for every past imperfection to nest inside. I walked the halls of the school like a museum guard, careful, invisible, exhausted by the thought of being seen. At lunch, I scrolled through social media with a curiosity that hurt. Kara had posted a photograph of our mother's hands, lined and lovely, cradling a blue mug. The caption read, "Families are complicated, but love tells the truth." The comments gathered like bees. "You're such a good daughter. Praying for peace. Truth always wins." Kara replied with prayer hands and hearts. She did not mention the bracelet, but the shadow of it darkened every pixel. My mother called again, asking if I had had a change of heart. I said I had not taken it, again. My father sent a text asking if I could come for dinner Sunday. I read it twice. The message felt like a fence with a gate barely open. I typed yes, then deleted it, then typed yes again. That night, I cooked pasta and ate 2 bites. I washed dishes and let them air dry in neat rows that gave me the illusion of control. Each action felt like walking across a thin lake. I thought about childhood, the way Kara and I choreographed our roles. She was sparkling and impatient, I was quiet and careful. When we were 6 and 7, our mother had cried because a favorite vase had been broken. Kara had set the vase back upright, edges pressed together so it looked whole until it wasn't. I had confessed without being asked. The memory shone with a new, terrible clarity. Saturday, I ran errands early, hoping to avoid conversation. At the farmer's market, Mrs. Jensen from church touched my wrist and said, "We all make mistakes." She squeezed a little too long. The assumption tasted like pennies. I bought apples and left them in the trunk, unnoticed until they thumped against the wheel well at each turn. The town had always been generous with its opinions. It was dangerous in that soft, smiling way that ruins reputations by accident and then calls it concern. In the afternoon, my principal asked me to swing by her office. She closed the door with that careful kindness people use when they believe they are protecting you. A parent had called, not to accuse, only to ask whether I was the right person to advise their daughter on ethics. The sentence was a wire strung tight across the room. I said I understood the concern. I said my personal life would not compromise my work. She believed me, then asked if there was anything I wanted to share. I said, simply, that a story was wrong. I went home and gathered every small, reliable thing that steadied me. Fresh sheets. A walk by the river, wind slicing clean across the water. Tea that tasted like the color green. I refused to call Kara, because I already knew how that would go. She would sound wounded. She would ask what she had done to deserve my anger. She would offer a path to peace that required my confession. It would be theater, not truth. When the sun dropped, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote what I knew. Times, places, details. Sunday's lunch, the faucet leak, the trip to the sink with our mother, the short walk Kara took to her car to fetch a better cloth. My list looked ordinary and bloodless. Still, it gave my mind rails to hold. I folded the paper and slid it into a book on my shelf. Then I poured myself the smallest measure of quiet courage and said it out loud to the room. I will not carry this lie. The vow made something inside me stand up. The night felt a degree warmer. My hands, finally, stopped shaking. The proof arrived by accident, as proof often does, uninvited and absolute. Sunday afternoon, I was sorting college brochures at my desk when my phone buzzed with a voicemail from an unknown number. The transcription preview showed fragments that loosened my knees. She'll think, dish, just move it, tell mom, be brave. I put the door sign to counseling in progress, locked it, and listened. First, a rustle, a car door shutting, wind through fabric. Then Kara, unmistakable, stage whisper sharpened by opportunity. Just hold it in the dish, Julie. I wanted to look casual. Yes, the blue one. I'll say Delaney put it in her bag when she helped with the leak. No, it's not mean, it's necessary. She's always the good one. People don't see what I see. Her breath was light and excited, as if shopping on sale. Another voice, the friend, said something about being careful. Kara laughed, quick and bright. I'll be careful with the truth. The message ended with the chime of a text arriving on her phone, then a clumsy tap, then silence. The voicemail had been created by a pocket dial to my number, a random miracle that changed nothing and everything. I replayed it twice, then a third time, then I sank into my chair as if my bones had decided to be heavier. The relief was not relief. It was air breaking back into a room. I forwarded the voicemail to my email and saved it to a flash drive, then another. The habit of order settled across me like a blanket. I checked the metadata, screen captured, printed a clean transcript. I am not a lawyer, but I understand documentation the way gardeners understand seasons. Good things take patience. Great things take patience and proof. I needed a witness who would not feed on drama. I walked 3 blocks to see my neighbor, Nadia Patel, a paralegal who wore black sweaters and never raised her voice. She had once coached me through a minor car insurance issue with the precision of someone who loves paperwork more than victory. She welcomed me into a living room that smelled like cinnamon and book glue. I handed Nadia my phone and did not fill the air with preface. She listened once, eyes narrowing, then again with her glasses on, her mouth tightening at the edges. When it ended, she set the phone on the table and pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of her nose. It's clear, she said. It's enough to correct the story. If it becomes a legal matter, an attorney can advise on the recording, but morally and publicly, this speaks. I don't want spectacle, I said. I want stillness that holds the truth. The sentence surprised me by sounding like someone older and wiser than I felt. Nadia nodded. Then choose your room. Choose your audience. Choose your volume. She suggested I wait for a family moment where denial would hurt the least and mend the most. Not a church foyer, not a public restaurant, not a crowded timeline. She said, let the truth be more patient than the lie. But don't let it be late. My father had invited me for dinner again the next evening. I told Nadia that. She smiled with that thin, encouraging warmth of someone who understands the fatigue built into doing the right thing. Bring another phone, she said. Play it loud enough to be clear, not loud enough to be cruel. On the way home, I walked past the river. A thin sheet of ice drifted along the edges, brittle and honest. The sky held that pale, winter light that makes every roof cut clean against it. I thought of the years Kara and I spent side by side, knees bruised from the same sidewalks, stories traded in bunk beds. I thought about the times I chose silence because peace felt gentler than accuracy. That silence had become a permission slip someone else used. At home, I tested the recording through a small speaker. The words were painfully crisp. Each syllable carried weight, the way a dropped key carries intent. I packed the flash drive, the printed transcript, and my growing steadiness in a zippered pouch. I set it by my front door and sat on the floor, back against the wall, listening to the house tell me I was not alone. I slept, not deeply, but without dreams that broke into panic. Morning found me washing a mug and drying it until the cloth squeaked. I made eggs that I could not finish. When the clock tipped toward evening, I put on a sweater with sleeves that covered the small tremor in my wrists. I looked at myself in the mirror, saw a face I recognized, and let my shoulders fall. The truth was not a weapon. It was a window. I planned to open it, then step back for the light. My parents' house smelled like rosemary and patience. My mother moved quietly at the stove, her posture careful, as if rearranging sorrow. My father set out plates with military neatness. He looked at me like someone who had misplaced a tool and was hoping to find it by glancing up. Kara arrived last, cheeks glazed by the cold, scarf dramatically looped. She carried a pie and a soft apology in her eyes before anyone spoke a word. We ate in careful bites. Conversation kept to weather, to the pothole on Cherry Lane, to my mother's new brand of flour that didn't behave like the old one. The empty chair of trust sat at the table, elbows resting on the wood. When my father finally said, about the bracelet, Kara's fork paused midair like a held breath. My mother folded her napkin in half, then in half again. I set my phone beside my plate. There's something I need you to hear, I said. My voice was even, almost gentle. Kara's eyes flickered to the phone, then away, then back, like a moth reconsidering a lamp. I received a voicemail by mistake, I continued. It's about Sunday. No, Kara said, too quickly. Her mouth shaped a soft warning. Delaney. My father lifted a hand, palm down. Please, he said. The word was small, but it entered the room with authority. I pressed play. The room filled with wind and fabric, then with my sister's voice, bright and efficient, instructing someone to place the bracelet, promising to be careful with the truth. The words that had bruised me now did their work without needing me to interpret them. Kara stared at the center of the table, the way a person looks at a trick that refuses to reveal its wires. When it ended, the house settled into a silence that felt like snowfall. My mother's hand drifted to her throat, not theatrical, just human. My father closed his eyes as if measuring the weight of his bones. The clock ticked in that kitchen way that counts more than seconds. Kara's first word was small. Julie, she said, as if summoning a friend who could rearrange the air. She misunderstood. We were trying to find the bracelet. I was telling her how to check the dish. She searched the room for angles that would flatten the truth. They did not appear. Her voice lost volume. It got out of hand. I kept my face still. It was never in hand, I said. My words were not sharp, only accurate. You made a choice. I'm sorry, Kara said, as if practicing the sound for a future conversation where the terms were kinder. I panicked. You're always the one who looks right. I just wanted Mom to see me. My mother drew in a slow breath. It made the curtain sway beside the window, the room that quiet. Seeing you would have been easier if you weren't asking us to look away from what you were doing, she said. Her voice was tired, but it did not shake. My father reached for the dish by the sink, that faithful little boat of family detritus, and held it like evidence. I wanted to believe both of you, he said. Turns out I should have believed the one who didn't ask me to pick a side. He set the dish down with a gentle click that sounded like a verdict. Kara tried to cry, but the tears did not land. They clung stubbornly to her lower lids, glittering and unfallen. I'll make it right, she said. I'll post something. I'll tell people I made a mistake. The words hovered in the air, thin as steam. I shook my head. This isn't a post, I said. This is a conversation with the people you used to make me into a story. You will call them. You will tell the truth. No flourishes, no favor. And you will start with Mom and Dad. I turned to my parents. I won't rewrite the past. I ask only that you stop letting Kara write the present. No one raised a voice. No chair scraped the floor. Justice arrived the way morning arrives, gradual, unarguable. My mother spoke a name I had not heard her use since we were small, the one for comfort and correction combined. Carolyn, she said, and the room adjusted its posture around the full name. You will make these calls. You will apologize to your sister first. She reached across the table for my hand, and I gave it, because forgiveness can begin before it knows its shape. Kara nodded, then nodded again when no one responded the first time. She stood, then sat, then finally stayed still. I hear you, she said. Her shoulders lowered, just enough to suggest a person whose armor had become too heavy to wear. I gathered my phone and placed it face down. The evidence had done its work. The truth did not need to repeat itself. The pie on the counter cooled, its cinnamon settling into the room like a reminder that sweetness is simplest when it does not try to sell itself. Dinner resumed in small movements. The conversation returned to weather because the weather asked nothing of us. I left early, kissed my mother's cheek, and stepped into a night that did not feel like judgment. The air was cold and clean. Behind me, the house kept breathing. Kara called 3 people the next morning, then 6 after that. She told the truth with a flatness that held. She did not add flourishes. She did not ask for counter-applause. Another day, she called the parent who had phoned my principal. She explained that she had lied. She asked that they update their impression of her sister. The parent replied with the careful grace of someone who didn't enjoy being part of anyone's story. They called the school to retract their complaint. My principal closed her office door and told me she was proud of how I had moved through it. She believed the new information because it came not from spectacle but from sequence. You did not swing, she said. You set something down, and the room noticed its weight. I went back to my office and finally ate the apple that had been rolling in my trunk. It tasted like something I had earned. At home, I cleared a shelf and put the flash drive behind a jar of buttons, not to hide it, but to give it a resting place. The transcript went into a folder labeled with the date. I watered the plant in my window, the one that survives my neglect, and watched its leaves shine in the thin winter sun. The town felt the same, but my footsteps fell differently inside it. A week later, my mother and I drove to the craft store for yarn she did not need. On the way, she kept apologizing in new arrangements, as if one might finally sound correct. I told her this was not a temple for guilt. She laughed a little and then cried the way she always cries, with her shoulders, like a private rain. She said, when you were little, you used to tell the truth even if it cost you friends. I should have remembered. I squeezed her hand until the light turned green. Kara's apology to me arrived in the backyard of my parents' house, where the lilacs brace themselves every spring. She came without a performance. She did not hug me first. I wanted to rearrange the story, she said. I wanted to stand in the warmth I think you live in. I made you pay for the cold I felt. She looked at her hands like they were learning her. I am sorry. I believed her, but belief is not a switch, it is a practice. I accept your apology, I said. Trust will walk slower. We stood there with our hands in our pockets, 2 women who had once built forts out of couch cushions and now were negotiating the architecture of adulthood. A sparrow hopped along the fence like a small witness taking attendance. The sapphire bracelet returned to the dish by my parents' sink as if it had been on a brief, unfortunate vacation. My mother wore it that Sunday when we ate roast chicken to celebrate nothing but survival. She lifted her wrist and said, Tom still has good taste. My father beamed like a man who has waded across a creek to stand on solid ground again. We played cards after dinner. We laughed without checking the air between us for weakness. I went home and slept the way children do after summer swimming, heavy and safe. I did not post about what happened. I didn't craft a thread, didn't write a caption that could be misunderstood. I said yes when people invited me for coffee again. I said no when the no came first. Reputation is made of repetition, and I began again. In March, sunlight spread across my kitchen table in such a clean stripe that it felt ceremonial. I brewed tea and let the steam enter my face, patient and slow. My hands moved over what needed doing, the stacked mail, the permission slips, the calendar scribbles. The river thawed in measured releases. Geese returned like a chorus that remembered the second verse by muscle memory. Before I put away the small speaker, I pressed play one last time, not to hurt myself, not to confirm a victory. The recording sounded like an artifact from another weather system. I deleted it, not out of denial but stewardship. The truth had done its job and deserved to rest. What remained was the work of tending what was true now. I stepped onto my porch and watched a child on a bike waver, then straighten, then ride forward with the brave wobble that means progress. Somewhere behind him, a parent called out an instruction that was mostly encouragement. I thought about what Nadia had said, about choosing rooms and volume. I decided I would continue to choose quiet wherever quiet allowed the truth to breathe. In the evening, I kneaded dough for bread, hands pressing and folding with a rhythm that asked for nothing but presence. The room filled with the smell of patience turning into nourishment. I sliced carrots and listened to the soft percussion of the knife. I set the table for one without apology. Grief had moved out. Resolve kept the spare room. Peace, finally, was paying rent. Before I ate, I sent Nadia a photograph of the bread with a simple message: "Thank you for reminding me that windows are better than walls." She replied with a heart and a request for the recipe. I smiled into the quiet and felt my chest make more space for breath. There will be other misunderstandings, other rooms where someone will try to rewrite me. I do not plan to play a recording every time. I plan to be one. A steady voice, clear without cruelty, enough volume to reach the people who matter. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below. And subscribe for more stories of quiet revenge.